In this video, we're going to be talking about all the buying associated costs when you buy a residential property here in Australia and all the hidden fees that no one tells you about. Even when I bought my first property in 2010, I was short $6,000 and I had to borrow it from my mother. Thanks, Mum, for borrowing me $6,000 back then. I did pay it back, but I want you to avoid this. And that's why we've made this video here today to go over all the buying associated costs when you buy a residential property in Australia. G'day, George Samios here from MAD, where we make it easy for everyday Australians to achieve their version of financial freedom. Okay, first buying associated fee, government fees. Now this is probably the biggest fee you're going to have to pay when you buy a residential property in Australia. Now the government fees change state to state. Some states are really expensive, generally our mates down south, and up here in Queensland we've got pretty good government fees in comparison. Now in the box below we've got a calculator link. Click it and you can work out how much stamp duty is in your state depending on where you live. One thing to take into consideration, the more money you spend, the more stamp duty is going to be. Other things to consider is if you're a first home buyer, there are a lot of concessions. So when you're working out on the stamp duty in the calculator in the link below, click first home buyer. For example, in Queensland, under $500,000, no stamp duty. You still, however, will have a transfer and registration fee. That's some hidden things that people miss all the time. There's not just stamp duty, there's transfer and registration costs. So for example, Queensland, if you buy under $500,000, yeah, they waive the stamp duty for you, but there's still a couple of grand in registration transfer fees. So these are fees are once off. Another thing to consider, if your settlement is more than 30 days, the government wants their stamp duty at 30 days. So if you sign a contract with a 45 or a 60-day settlement, they will be asking for stamp duty on 30 days. So you can ask for an extension, ask your lawyer, and I'll explain more about lawyers later on in the video. So that covers government fees. Next up on the list, team, is legal fees or conveyancing costs. These range from $1,200 to $2,000 depending upon the firm that you use. Now there are a lot of cheaper firms out there, team, and if you're a first home buyer watching this, I really recommend doing your research and finding someone who's got good reviews, because there is a lot of things that a conveyancer does which we'll go through right now, and those cheaper conveyancing firms tend to just email you out or post you out a huge checklist and you go through what you want, what searches you want to do, and all the different things associated, and it's quite confusing if you're a first home buyer. So you want a lawyer or conveyancer or solicitor, they all do the same sort of thing in this sort of transaction, to pick you up and explain what they're going to do. But basically what they do, okay, they liaise with us, the broker, and or the lender if you're going directly to a bank, which hopefully you're not watching this video. They also speak with the seller's conveyancer and they attend settlement together, and they shake hands and lodge transfers and bank checks for money, and they actually arrange settlement. They also, of course, do a lot of searches on property. So searches, for example, flood searches, or searches to make sure there's no huge infrastructure going in if you'd like. They can do transport searches. There's a whole lot of compulsory searches and non-compulsory searches, and a good conveyancer will explain to you, listen, have you got concerns, for example, you're buying acreage and there's a lot of trees, there's a koala protected, can you knock those trees down, can you not? They will help you what's relevant to you and your property transaction. Caveat searches, easements, if it's a unit, body corporate, disclosure searches. But of course the main reason you want a lawyer on your side if something goes wrong. For example, you sign a contract and you go unconditional and then the floods happen. Whose responsibility is that? So lawyers are great, or they're required for just basically getting the property into your name and doing all the relevant adjustments and searches, which is next on the list of fees. But if something goes wrong, you want a lawyer. So hopefully that explains what a lawyer conveyancer does in a property transaction. Okay, the next hidden buying associated cost is one a lot of people get caught up on, so listen carefully. This is for rates adjustments, water adjustments, and if you buy a unit or townhouse, body corporate adjustments. Now your lawyer does the adjustments for you. What they actually do is they work out how much the person before you has paid in advance, because we pay these things quarterly, every 3 months. And they work out when settlement date is, and if the person before you has paid for another month or two, we work out the difference, and that's called an adjustment. For example, if for the quarter body corporate was $1,000 and you settled halfway in between that quarter, you would owe the seller $500 because they've already paid $1,000. So, by the way, body corporate is on $1,000 per quarter every time. Body corporate could range from $1,000 per quarter to $12,000 per year, because it all depends on the property you're buying. If you buy a unit with elevators and pools and on-site management of maintenance and so on, that's of course going to attract more body corporate for you to pay. So when you are buying, make sure you know what the body corporate cost. Rates generally is not that expensive. It's about $500 to $600 per quarter, and this is for your bin collection. And water is for your sewage and water usage. So this can be approximately $300 to $400 per quarter. So they all add up, and upon settlement, if you don't know what it is, it could cost you $6,000 like it did me back in 2010. So make sure you know when you're buying how much body corporate is, how much water is, and how much rates are, because this is the number one reason first home buyers get caught when buying property. Alright gang, next on the list is general insurance, building insurance. It's a big misconception that you get insurance on settlement, where in fact in Queensland especially, you're supposed to get insurance the day you sign a contract. For the worst case scenario, which we've all just gone through with the Brisbane floods again. So imagine you sign a contract and you go past unconditional and settlement's here and the floods happen. It's the buyer's responsibility for that house. So gotta get insurance day one. Now, again, there's a lot of things to remember when you buy. So when you're with a mad broker, we will make sure that you do all of these things. We don't expect you to remember. There's too many moving parts to a property, buying a property. Next on the list is building and pest reports. Now, building and pest reports can vary from $500 to $1,500 depending how thorough you want your report. Now, these reports are good to make sure that what you're buying is what you thought. Is it full of termites? Is the hot water system working? Is the electricity done properly and earthed? There are a lot of different things when buying a house. Like I once nearly bought a house, and when I was doing a building and pest report, the building and pest inspector said to me, "Have you looked in the roof, mate?" I said, "No, I have not." He says, "Have a look." And it was completely black in there. There had been a house fire, and the real estate agent did not even tell me. Of course, I then crashed the contract with the building and pest clause, and I got my full deposit back. So when you sign a contract, you buy it subject to building and pest, subject to finance. These are there to protect the buyers. So highly recommend getting a building and pest report. Not only do they protect you, they're also a great negotiation tactic and can save you thousands of dollars when buying. For example, I generally see savings between two, but the biggest was 50 grand when someone had done a building and pest report and the roof was not done properly. And so they got a 50 grand reduction in buying a property. That's the biggest one I saw. So getting a building and pest report is great because we're not pest inspectors and we're not builders. We want to make sure that it's structurally sound and not full of termites, but also a great negotiation tactic. Next on the agenda is lender fees. Now at Mad Loans, we don't charge our clients money. The banks pay us commission to do all the work for you. Now it's a very competitive mortgage market out there. Most banks are waiving the application fee. Most banks are waiving the cost of evaluation. but there is usually a cheeky $200 settlement fee, or there could be $363 depending upon the lender. If you've got a guarantor, there could be another $400 worth of fees for the extra paperwork the bank has to do. If you've got a small deposit, like 5%, then there's of course that lender's mortgage insurance, which can be an upfront fee or capitalized, which means basically put on top of your loan. Another one which is big is rate lock fee. Now this varies depending upon the lender. Could be as little as $375, $500, $750, or even 0.1 or 0.15% of that fixed portion. So there could be, potentially hundreds or even thousands of dollars of lender fees. So make sure it's very clear when you're talking to your broker or the lender, you understand all the potential lender fees that you'll be up for, because you don't want to be like me, minus $6,000 on settlement and you got nowhere to find it. The last hidden fee, everyone, that a lot of people forget, is removalist fees. Now a lot of first home buyers usually have a mate with a ute. But if it's just your second or third time, or even if you've just got heaps of stuff, this could range from hiring a truck, $600, to a couple of $1,000 depending how much stuff you've got. So as you can see, everyone, when you buy a property, there could be, on average, for example, an $800,000 property, $30,000 of buying associated fees. So it is very important that you work out with your lender or your broker all the exact buying associated fees. Now at Mad Loans, we go through every single buying associated fee custom to the exact situation of our clients. So there's no question marks how much money you owe upon settlement. Hopefully you found good value in today's video. If you did, please like and subscribe. We really appreciate it, and you have a mad day.